Thanks everyone for joining. We're waiting just a few minutes to make sure everyone is on, and then we'll get started. I'm also going live in Facebook, just so everyone knows. Okay, we are live in Facebook. So Lori, if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you, Hannah, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the 2020 CSN NAM Legislative Candidate Forum. I'm Lori Ponce, Director of the Coalition for a Strong Nebraska. I, along with Joe Giles, who is our Director of Policy and Training, run this coalition, which is made up of nonprofits and service providers statewide who support policy to fight poverty. I want to thank our partner tonight, the Nonprofit Association of the Midlands, for doing the heavy lifting for this forum by handling the technology. Hannah Young, who you will hear from shortly, Rosie Higgs, and Abby Hughes, thank you for all the work you did to make this forum possible. Together, the Coalition for a Strong Nebraska and the Nonprofit Association of the Midlands have close to 700 members, reaching every part of the state. Many of our members are tuning in tonight either through this webinar or on Facebook Live. I want to thank the candidates for participating tonight. Your interest means a great deal to our members who work hard every day serving the people of Nebraska who are trying to get through this difficult time. Tonight, we're going to hear from 4 presenters who are going to tell us about the work they are doing and how Nebraskans are managing in 4 areas: access to food, affordable and secure housing, the workplace, and their children and families. Our presenters will be introduced before their presentations. I would like to introduce the candidates joining us tonight. When I say your name and the district in which you're running, I would appreciate it if you could give a little wave to the audience. Candidates will have time to briefly introduce themselves and make a comment or ask a question after the presentations. So joining us tonight are Mark Snow, running in Legislative District 9, John Kavanaugh, also running in Legislative District 9, Cheryl Lindau, running in Legislative District 17, Stephanie Pleasant, running in District 25, Susan Hester, running in District 45, Janet Palmtag, running in Legislative District 1, Terrell McKinney, running in District 11, Fred Conley, also running in District 11, Helen Rakes, running in District 23, Tim Royers, running in District 31, Senator Dan Quick, running in Legislative District 35, Senator Luann Linehan, running in District 39, and Allison Hymas, running in District 39 as well. With that, I will turn it over to Hannah so we can get started.
Thank you so much. I will give a kind of a brief introduction to NAM in the next slide, but I just wanted to go over a couple ground rules for those participating. This forum is being recorded and will be available tomorrow. We will also be putting it on all of our social media channels. I believe both organizations will, so just know that it will be recorded. If possible, please use the question and answers box in the chat part instead of the actual chat to answer any questions. It makes it easier for us to see and make sure they don't get lost. Please remember that this is a nonpartisan forum. We will not allow any non-501c3 friendly questions, comments, or displays of campaigning. So just keep that in mind. And with that, I will dive in. Okay, a little bit more about NAM, or Nonprofit Association of the Midlands. We strengthen the collective voice, leadership, and capacity of nonprofit organizations to enrich the community life throughout Nebraska and Western Iowa. Here are just a couple things of our main points. We model best practices and have a guidelines and principles. We maximize our over 650 nonprofit member resources and capacity. We have leadership for board development and governance programs. We have a public policy and advocacy sector. And then we also provide training and networking. About just 501c3s in general, for those who may not know, it is simply a tax-exempt status. Earnings may not benefit any private shareholder or individual, and profits must be reinvested in programs. It may not be an action organization, so that is where we can't participate in any campaign activity or any partisan activity. Thanks to the Johnson Amendment, that's something that's actually in our public policy agenda to make sure that it's kept. We believe that politics should stay out of nonprofits, and it really protects us and makes it easier for us to do our work without being swayed by politics. We can, however, and should advocate for policies that best impact the people and communities they serve. This activity is tracked and is disclosed at the federal level, and the 501H election, Usually you're staffed by paid professional and supported by volunteers. We employ 1 out of every Nebraskans and 1 out of 10 Americans, and we'll get a little more into that in just a second. There are different kinds of 501c3s. This kind of shows you the breakdown. This is nationally. There are also private foundations that are considered 501c3s as well. Other 501c blanks. So your 501c4s are civic leagues, local associations of employees, social welfare organizations. This is also those nonprofits who have more lenience in working with politically. So they are the ones who have an arm that can do direct lobbying, more of that, and then they can endorse a candidate. 501c6s are your chambers of commerce, and the 501c7s are your social and recreational clubs. So it's just kind of a little overview on 501c blanks and knowing kind of the difference of them. Economic impact report. We had Category 1 Consulting do our economic impact report, and they helped us really dive into how economics impact the state of Nebraska and how our sector is so important. Our bottom line is a better community. There are more nonprofits per capita in Nebraska than in the United States. Most are focused on human services, are in more populated counties. So here's just a breakdown of overall nonprofits, and then the breakdown, and then where they are in the state per county. At the end of this presentation, when Lori sends out the follow-up information, you will also get, the candidates will also get a document that has a map to every nonprofit in your district. So you'll get to see how many there really are. It's really, really cool, I think. Economic ripple effect. Nonprofit revenue, expenses, and assets have increased over time. However, the majority of nonprofits operate with less than $250,000 in net assets. We are job creators. Nonprofits employed over 90,000 Nebraskans, that's 1 in 11, and paid $3.9 billion in wages. Again, this site data is from 2015. A nice little myth buster, nonprofits don't pay taxes, is false. Despite common misconceptions, nonprofits and their employees pay a variety of taxes. Nonprofits paid over $263 million in payroll taxes alone. So here's just a small breakdown of all the taxes that nonprofits pay and the employees pay who work for nonprofits. Nebraskans are very generous with their time and money. It's something we're really thankful for. 84% of Nebraskans report charitable contributions, averaging 5,264. So we are a very generous state, and we are just very appreciative of that. Here are some, I think, less common things people know about nonprofits, things that had started by nonprofits or what things that are responsible because of nonprofits. So just a couple really interesting and maybe things you hadn't thought of before. Next, we'll get into some COVID-19 pulse polls that NAM did over the last 6 months. The first and second polls, so the purpose of these was really to gauge the impact of COVID-19 on nonprofits. We all know, the globe has taken a hit from COVID-19, but what impact specifically does that have on nonprofits and then on their communities because of that? The first poll was done in March of 2020. It was very basic and reactive. It was right after everything kind of shut down. And it was when I think we all didn't realize how long this would be lasting. So a lot of it was just like, are you providing hand sanitizer? Are you letting your employees work from home? Stuff like that. So that's obviously changed pretty drastically, but it was very basic. And we did have 500 individual responses, but we had duplicates. So that's a bigger number than it definitely should be. The second poll was conducted about 6 weeks later in April. The continued impacts of COVID-19 on nonprofits and their employees. And this one was a little more realistic because we asked for only one per organization. So we got 231 organizational responses. Some findings from those: 97% of nonprofits had been impacted by that point. This kind of shows how they have been impacted. One thing that kind of went up the most from March to April was the concerns with the economy and the implications that would have on their organizations, because as the economy goes down, people might not be as willing and able to give. More from the second, remember this would have ended in April, so it's a little dated. Anticipated loss of at least $42 million. That was very, very conservative because it was only those who participated, and if they gave a range, I chose the lower amount, so I would say this is very low. 55% of nonprofits said they had to cancel or postpone a major event or fundraiser, which is really concerning because of the money that was lost to the nonprofit and how much money and time they had put into it at that point, because we all know it takes a lot of money to also put those on. So they lost a lot there. 22% moved their event online or are unsure what will happen. Again, that was as of April. And then when asked for long-term financial implications, you can see here that 39% were moderate, but they thought that they could go overcome. They would need a little bit of help. 33% was moderate, but they would overcome. And then 11% at the time said that their effects were significant and they were worried about long-term operations. We did a third pulse poll. It just closed yesterday, so unfortunately I do not have all of the data yet, but so far we did have 248 responses, which was pretty on par for the second one. We will be ready to report this in a few weeks and I can send it out to everyone as well. A few standout data points that I just pulled today was 99% of nonprofits have been impacted, which makes sense. I think everyone has felt some impact. 54% have gone up in increased service demand, but 58% says funding has decreased. So that will be a major issue going into the next couple months. When asked how long they could remain open with no additional funding, this was the breakdown. So 3% don't think they can make it, 20% can last 1 to 3 months, 27% 4 to 6 more months, 29% 6 to 12 more months, and about 20% could last past a year. The anticipated additional losses of COVID-19 from here on out, or at least 16 million more. Again, that's on top of the 42, I'm sorry, we saw earlier. So, and again, these are all just what I could pick out today. So look forward to that coming up. Okay, and that is all from the NAM side. So now I'm going to turn it over to Brian. Brian Barks is the president and CEO at the Food Bank for the Heartland. In this role, he is responsible for overall management and direction of Food Bank for the Heartland, as well as overseeing the budgetary, strategic planning, and community relations and management functions. Brian joined the Food Bank in April 2009 as the Director of Philanthropy and Communications.
Time for me to go.
Yeah.
Perfect, Hannah. Thank you. Also, want to thank everybody for this platform to be able to talk to you about what we do at the food bank and our mission. Just to give you a little groundwork in regards to who we are at the food bank and the work that we do. Food Bank for the Heartland is based in Omaha, and our service area is to distribute food in 77 of Nebraska's 93 counties. There are two food banks in the state of Nebraska, the Food Bank for the Heartland in Omaha and the Food Bank of Lincoln. The Lincoln Food Bank serves 16 counties in southeast Nebraska. And just to add a little extra tidbit, our food bank is also responsible for serving food, distributing food in 16 counties to our neighbors in Iowa as well. So one of the things that I want to let you know also is that our mission at the food bank is to provide emergency and supplemental food to people in need in Nebraska and western Iowa. And just to give you a little groundwork in regards to how we do this. At Food Bank for the Heartland, we collect millions and millions and millions of pounds of donated food. And thanks to COVID-19, we are also purchasing millions and millions and millions of pounds of food, spending millions of dollars doing so in order to distribute that food. Now, what we do is we act basically as a central clearinghouse of food, and then we partner, we have about 600 or so plus partners throughout our two-state service area. Those partners include your traditional brick and mortar pantries, shelters, schools, and then some programs that we also do. And it is through that network that the food is distributed to families that need food assistance. Now, one of the biggest things that we've been challenged by in due to COVID-19 is that there is a finite amount of donated food that we were able to acquire. And we also saw in early March, April, May, and a good portion of June, and seeing just a little bit of it today, a stressed supply chain. Consumer demand is really, really high. So when we are ordering food, it is not unusual for us to experience delays in the amount of food to come to us. So we have had to make dramatic increases in the amount of food that we purchase for distribution. The other challenges that we are facing at our food bank as well is volunteer limitations due to social distancing. At our organization, typically we will have about 60 volunteers at our organization per 2.5 hour shift. And due to social distancing, we've had to cut that number in half, which has also impacted the amount of food that then we are able to distribute. Now, just to give you an idea of what food insecurity looks like and numbers related to that. Prior to COVID, it was estimated that in our service area, roughly 207,000 people were considered food insecure. Food insecure being defined as, at one point in time, someone doesn't have the resources to put a healthy meal on the table. Thanks to COVID-19, that number, according to data collected by Feeding America, it is estimated that number has jumped from 207,000 to 296,000 people. It's about 1 in 4 kids, 1 in 6 adults. We responded to COVID-19 with a 4-pronged approach by creating a new hybrid program, the mobile backpack program, where we were able to provide meals to kids who were out of school when school was closed back in March. That program from March through the month of August provided over 420,000 meals to kids. Now, this program was operated pretty much in the Omaha metropolitan area. Another thing that we've had to do is that we provided a lot more food to our agency partners, our network of partners who were asking for and needing more food. We increased the number of mobile pantries that we conducted at the food bank. This being a mobile pantry is a one-day direct distribution where we would partner with a church group or a school or whatnot. And it is a tool that we utilize greatly in rural communities where the access to food assistance is low, but the need is high. And we run probably 40 to 45 mobile pantries per month throughout our service area of Nebraska and western Iowa. The other area that we have seen a lot of increased traffic is through the SNAP program. We have 13 staff members right now at our facility who help people through the application process to receive SNAP benefits. As you would imagine, in March and continuing today, we've had a lot of traffic, call volume through that SNAP hotline. And the one thing that I want to also emphasize too is that while there's certainly signs of the economy rebounding, we certainly aren't seeing, at least at the food bank, things getting back to normal. We are not seeing normal. The normal amount of food that we are distributing was back in February, January, December. We are consistently distributing more food than ever before right now, and we do not see an end in sight. One thing that I think is important to know is that food insecurity or food security typically lags in an economic recovery. History tells us this. We saw it following the Great Recession. Those numbers that I told you about 207,000 people being food insecure and now 296, those numbers were, we had those similar numbers during that time during the Great Recession. It took 10 years for those numbers to drop to pre-Great Recession levels. And we are anticipating that it's going to take that long again. That's the way we're planning and moving forward at the food bank. Now, also want to note that poverty looks different. Poverty and or food insecurity looks different no matter where you are in Nebraska. It looks different in Omaha than it does in Grand Island or in Chadron or in Brainerd or in Fairfield, Nebraska. In Omaha, there's more resources for people to access. In rural communities, there's not. And that's why serving rural communities has been a real challenge for us and will continue to be so, whether in a COVID environment or not. One thing that COVID has also done is it has put new people into the arena of seeking food assistance. 1 in 4 people who are seeking food assistance are doing so for the very first time. Nationally, 40% of households who had incomes of $40,000 or less lost a job. And one of the reasons why we believe this is going to linger for years to come is it's because those people who are living paycheck to paycheck are going to have a hard time catching back up. I will use myself as an example. Following the Great Recession, I lost a job. It took 5 months for me to find work. I found a job that made 60% less than I was before. It took us years to catch back up. Moving forward, please know, Nebraska has a food insecurity problem. What COVID-19 did was that it exposed it and it has made it worse. Food insecurity is a symptom of a much larger problem, whether it's employment, healthcare, housing, or whatnot. Now, there's a bunch of numbers and statistics that you see right now on your screen, but please know that behind these numbers and statistics, there are real people. And the one that I will never forget that I met was at a mobile pantry distribution that we conduct each month out in Grand Island. Typically, this, and it's in a partnership with a local church. Typically, this mobile pantry will serve roughly 400 households a month. Back in May, they were serving 1,000 households a month. And they had to move it to Fauner Park. The distribution on this one Saturday morning in May was scheduled for 9:30 in the morning. There were hundreds and hundreds of cars lined up to start before the distribution. I went and talked to the gentleman who was the first in line. He got there at 6:30 in the morning for a 9:30 a.m. distribution. He was a Korean War vet. He was there because his son was out of work due to COVID. His daughter-in-law was disabled, and they were caring for 2 kids, and they had nowhere else to turn. So he was there to help provide food for his family. We have real stories of real Nebraskans who are having a hard time right now. And please know, this pandemic will come and it will go. But the economic fallout and the impact on Nebraska families will linger for years to come. So again, I do thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about what we are facing at Food Bank for the Heartland. I can tell you the stories are just the same with our friends at the Food Bank of Lincoln. It's Nebraskans all over who are struggling. And fortunately, Fortunately, we have been blessed by a giving community to help us do the work that we've been doing. We're distributing approximately 70% more food than we were the same time a year ago. But hunger relief organizations like Food Bank for the Heartland and the Food Bank of Lincoln cannot do it alone. If we're waiting for food banks to fix the food insecure problem in our state, it'll never get done. We need help. It needs to be a public-private partnership. Again, thank you for the platform. I really do. I'm passionate about what we do. I'm passionate about serving our fellow Nebraskans. I'm awfully proud to be a Nebraskan, and I will do everything I can to help our neighbors. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was very powerful, and we really, really appreciate your support in our community. We will save questions for the end, but we will go back to panelists if you have certain questions for certain panelists at the end. Please stay tuned. Thank you again, Brian. Next, we have the legal aid from Legal Aid of Nebraska. We have Jeff Eastman. He is a managing attorney. Jeff has been the managing attorney at Legal Aid Office in North Platte for the last 14 years. He was born and raised in North Platte. Jeff handles every type of legal aid case, which includes the focus areas of housing, children and families, debt, and income and benefits. Jeff, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Brian. I love the food bank. Thanks to all the candidates. I've been on the ballot before. It's a difficult thing. Did the old yard sign thing, but I think that's all in my past. So I have a lot of respect for anybody that's going to be on the ballot. But I'd like to talk a little bit about legal aid because a lot of people seem not to know what it is. We serve low income people. We don't charge anything for what we do. Legal aid was chartered by Congress in, I think it was 1974. And there's a legal aid in every state. And in fact, some cities have their own. A real prominent legal aid is Rio Grande in Texas, which is, more of a regional. New York City has their own legal aid. But it's a hard thing to understand, and I'm not going to get into the details of it, but we're a nonprofit, non-government entity. A lot of people think like I get a paycheck from the state or federal government. I don't. We get a little money from Congress. We have to apply for that every year, but most of our funding is grant money, foundation money. Omaha has some wonderful foundations that support us. And even here in North Platte, we have some local, our Mid-Nebraska Community Foundation supports us here in North Platte. Could we have the next slide, Hannah? Thanks. I think it's Hannah doing the slide work. Thank you for that. We're a statewide law firm, which you can't say that about any other law firm in the state of Nebraska. We have 8 locations. You'll see there's a location in Bancroft. That started out during the agricultural crisis of 1980, of the 80s. If some of you may remember that. I do remember it. I'm old enough to remember that in Bancroft office, the ag office, rural response hotline, that became part of legal aid at some point after the 1980s. But we have these offices throughout the state, as you can see here on the slide, and we cover every part of this state. I'm checking my notes here. I'm looking off to the side. Could you go on to the next slide, Hannah? Now, these are just the different areas that legal aid covers. I don't expect you to necessarily remember all that. Just remember that legal aid tries to cover all these different legal areas on the civil side of the law. We are prohibited by Congress from doing criminal work. I made a note to myself. I want to point out to you that the working poor is really a large part of our client base. A lot of people tell me, geez, Jeff, why don't your clients work? How come you have to help people that aren't having a job, or they got too many kids and they're not contributing their part to society. That's not the case in hardly any of my cases. It's a working poor that causes a problem. I shouldn't say it causes a problem. They have a problem surviving. The best job they're ever going to have is probably working at the local convenience store during the night shift while they got two small kids at home. They're a flat tire or a medical emergency away from missing a paycheck and starting a regular trip to the food bank because they aren't able to put food on the table any longer because of a sudden disruption. They just live paycheck to paycheck, and we all are familiar, and we know people that live paycheck to paycheck. Next slide, please. And again, this is a lot of numbers. I don't expect you to really remember a lot of this or any of it, but legal aid has an overwhelming request for assistance, and we have about 100 employees across the state. Maybe 25 or 30 of them are attorneys. We can't help everyone that calls, so we have to have a priority to figure out who we're going to help. We just can't help everyone. But anyway, you can see that there's thousands of requests for assistance and only a certain amount of people that we can help. Next slide, please. Now, I was asked to talk about housing quality problems, and I'm going to talk about North Platte because that's what I'm familiar with. I've been here in the North Platte office of legal aid for 14 years, and I'm familiar with North Platte. I grew up here. And North Platte isn't much different than all these other rural areas. I mean, North Platte's, they're struggling to hold on to their population. They've been lucky in the fact that North Platte's been able to maintain their population pretty well, but throughout this region and farther west and north, there's a lot of small towns and counties that are really hurting much worse than North Platte, and North Platte does have a lot of hurt in it. And part of that is the housing problems. There's too many condemned and deteriorating houses, and you'll see here in a minute some of the numbers on the housing problems and the issues we have in North Platte. Now, there was a major study done in North Platte just within the last year and a half. It was very extensive. The report, I think, was 180 pages, very in-depth, and it spurred some action here locally to address the housing problems. If I could have the next slide, please. And again, this is a list any of you could make, but you see broken exterior doors, holes in the floors, walls, and ceilings, holes in the ceiling where the rain comes in. Mold is pretty prevalent. There's a lot of mold issues. To be honest with you, we don't have a very robust city government response to it. The response has been, it's based on a complaint. If you complain, they'll come respond. That's pretty much all they're going to do. They're not in the business of going around making sure there's a safe place to live unless somebody's willing to complain about it. And most times, many times, usually there's never a complaint made because the landlord and the tenant, my clients, low income people, are at war with each other because the client is paying more money than they can afford to have a bad place to live. Conditions aren't good, especially for a family with small children, and the landlord doesn't have any incentive to make these rentals any better. There's no incentive for them. The only entity that can make a landlord create a better living environment is the city or some type of municipal government, because housing is so tight here. And the quality of housing is so poor that landlords don't care if tenants leave because they'll have it rented within 3 or 4 days. So they don't care if tenants leave. They don't care if the tenant's mad at them. And we could have a whole nother discussion about landlord-tenant law, because the landlord-tenant law isn't protecting the clients I have. And here in the state of Nebraska, the landlord-tenant law it's watered down. It's really a watered down legal framework we have, and there's not much protection for tenants. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, this is a mobile home. Probably all of you have these types of mobile homes in your community. And here on the sidebar, it talks about homeowners, owners of rental housing. These are the people that are involved in the housing problems. We all know that. But what I want to point out to you on this slide is, and I run across this over and over again through my years here at Legal Aid, where these rental homes or these mobile homes, that's the only kind of housing that my clients can afford normally, a mobile home. But what happens is they show up when the weather's warm. It's in May or June, and they have a chance to rent this trailer for way more than what it's worth. They might spend $450 to rent this trailer, and this is probably atypical. Somebody's not going to rent a trailer this bad, but this is, I guess, exaggerated to maybe try to make the point here. But the problem that comes about is finally a young single mom with a couple of kids or a young family finds a place that they want to live, and it's a mobile home. They move in, and weather's nice and warm, and then winter comes, and they haven't thought ahead to the idea that there's going to be cold weather. And to heat that mobile home, it's going to cost another $400 a month to heat that mobile home. And they don't have money to pay the rent or pay the heat bill. And pretty soon they're going without heat. And then they're going to be at war with their landlord again. So it's a circle that just goes on and on. And the other thing about mobile homes and very low quality housing is that for older people and young people, and especially for older people, it's their home and they won't leave. That's all they have. So you can pick up a mobile home. You can purchase a mobile home for $6,000-7,000, probably less, and that's their home. And you can't get them to leave. You can't. They don't want anybody to come in. It's theirs. It's their place. They don't have anywhere to go, and so they continue to live in these rotten, beat up, run down rental units and mobile homes. It's their home. I have my home, and if somebody tells me, Jeff, we don't like the way you're living in here, and we want to come in and help you and check around, I'm not really wanting to do that. And that's the same way with my clients, except they're living in these very bad living conditions. Next slide, please. That's just a picture of it's a photo, I should say. All our communities have these. I guess just visuals are powerful, and I guess that's just a visual for you. And the next slide, that's another property here in North Platte. I don't know if anybody's living there. Might be homeless people in there, but if you go to the next slide. The only thing I'll say about this slide is there's a dumpster there, which indicates there's probably somebody living in there. It's got a roof on it, and it's got a awning over the window. Looks like somebody mowed the yard, so somebody's probably living there. Now, I wouldn't want to live there, but probably one of my clients has lived there or is living there or will be living there in the future. So just a lot of rundown properties. Next slide, please. Now, this is interesting to me. Part of the results of the housing study in North Platte, I don't know if you can, on your screen, I don't know how your screen is looking to you. My screen kind of has a sidebar blocked off where it shows some photo, or I can see you all on that sidebar, but I'll read the headline. What that headline says, in case you can't read it, it says 57% of homes in North Platte were built before 1960. So nearly 60% of the homes in North Platte are over 60 years old. That's an incredible number. Now, and that article there is about micro TIF, which is pending in the legislature. I don't know if pending is the right word, but it was brought, I think, to a vote, or it went through committee or some such thing, and it's been quite well received, is my understanding of it. But micro TIF, and that's I think it kind of describes itself. Micro TIF is a smaller version of the larger TIF program that we've had in Nebraska for a really long time, and I'm not going to try to explain it all to you. If I tried it, I'd probably not explain it very well. I can see a note here from Senator Linehan. Micro TIF passed this summer. All right. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Okay, so, and then the next slide, I'm getting towards the end here. I feel like I might be carrying on too long, but if you get to the next.
This is the last slide we have from you.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is the last slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I had a couple other slides. I'll just, if I can relate this to you quickly here before I wrap up. There was a health assessment done. I had 3 slides that I intended to show to you, but that's okay. I think I've made my point here with the slides I've had for you. But the slide that I meant to show you was the hospital here in North Platte. We've had a wonderful hospital built in the last few years in North Platte, and they've done a fantastic job. Well, they did a community assessment of their own, and part of the assessment, they had to set goals to this assessment. They had to set several goals. I think the federal government has been behind this whole process, but anyway, one of the things that was assessed through the assessment of the hospital study was that poor housing conditions are contributing to poor health. And doctors at the emergency room report back to their management and their supervisors, look, we have people in here that are sick because of these places that they're living. And so that's why the hospital here in North Platte has made that, I think it's a 5-year plan, so something like that. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get off on this whole idea of health, the status of the various populations here in North Platte health, but there's a lot of work to do in that area too. But that's all I have for you on my part of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We really, really appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions for Jeff, feel free to put them in the chat box, or in the question and answer, I'm sorry. We will get to them at the end. Okay, next we have Aaron, the Executive Director at Heartland Workforce Solution. Aaron, responsible to execute the mission and vision of Heartland Workforce Solution, including the administration, management, planning, evaluation, policy development, personnel, and public relations. So go ahead, Aaron, and take over.
Hello all, great to be with you right now in such a key time. Isn't it great to have an opportunity to really listen together and learn about what our communities need and what's happening within them? And thank you for the many of you who are looking to advance initiatives to make good things happen for Nebraska. A word about Heartland Workforce Solutions. Heartland Workforce Solutions is a collective impact organization. We are a nonprofit, but we're also quasi-governmental. We have 3 workforce development boards in Nebraska, and we serve the Douglas, Sarpy, and Washington County areas. As I tell you that, I want you to footnote or log in your mind that in those 3 counties, we have almost 49% of all of the Nebraska unemployment claims. So that looks like a concentration or a density of people who are receiving unemployment in this local area. predominantly that is Douglas County, the most dense county. We know that recently in the news, Nebraska has been celebrated as having the lowest unemployment right now in the nation. And while that might sound awesome as a state, it isn't awesome in Douglas, Sarpy, Washington County, predominantly Douglas County. What we know is the disproportionate impact that the layoffs have had is definitely in the zip codes where people are residing, experiencing poverty, experiencing unemployment, experiencing underemployment, and majority of those are minorities, people who are immigrants, people who are speaking Spanish, people who are African American. So you can imagine the compounding issues, the issues that were present before COVID, which was and is institutional racism, a fraction of the dollar in wages earned for equal jobs. So this layered impact for our area is heartbreaking, incredibly concerning, and it's an emergency. Next slide. So, back in March when we were all in shock, what immediately happened was hundreds of people waiting outside of our doors looking for help to apply for unemployment insurance claims. And we learned a lot about people who were coming to us. Hundreds of people waiting hours and hours, some people who had begun their wait at 4 o'clock in the morning, hoping that they could get in. So many people were waiting and for so long because we also had the distancing concerns where we could help maybe 5 people in our resource area at any one time, where ordinarily it would be in the 20s and we could pack other rooms as long as we had staff. But we had folks who had experienced tremendous difficulties. One fellow I greeted one early morning said, as if a deer in the headlights, he told me, today is my 30th work anniversary working at the same place. And I was so happy to go into work. It's just that they had to lay me off. And so they said, come over here and start my unemployment application. I can't believe I'm here. I thought I was celebrating. This is not an unusual story. And it impacted people who just had been doing the same kind of role for a long time and didn't have to skill up or think beyond what they were doing at the time. A lot of that was skilled labor. A lot of that was in the food accommodation, hospitality, et cetera. And as we know in our local area, our work participation rate is one of the highest in the nation. Isn't that crazy? That's not what you generally are thinking about. But what we also know is that in these zip codes where people are residing with this oppression of poverty, that they can work 2 and 3 jobs, however, still trying to make a wage that they can support their family, and that may not come with health insurance. So there are a lot of impacts going on right now. So it's changed some, hasn't it? I mean, the stats don't all say the same thing. When we look at 4% in Nebraska unemployment rate, that doesn't include the numbers of people who have now exhausted their unemployment insurance, who have given up, who are still hopeful that maybe this week their job will come back, that their employer has said, hang in there, I think pretty soon I can call you back, but it's not working yet. That, with the layered responsibilities of kids who are still kind of gradually going back to school, but yet needing that added help at home. Other folks that have come to us, we've learned that they have limited literacy, for example. Wouldn't know where to start if placed in front of a computer. Don't know what to touch and what not to touch. Cannot spell may not speak the language, may not understand the culture at all. That, along with creating resumes and uploading for virtual job fairs, et cetera, are just an absolutely huge hurdle for the people who are needing us to be there for them. People who are experiencing COVID, people who are recovering from COVID, people who are trying not to get COVID but have immune suppressed circumstances or are caring for a loved one that's at risk. These are the layers that are impacting people and their ability to try to get work again and provide for their family. We know that people who are coming to us are also experiencing a ton of shame and fear. They have paid into unemployment. This is what our state provides, and nationally it's here for folks. But what they're feeling is incredible shame and apologizing to have to be there to apply, would rather work for a living, and never thought that they would be in this position. So we know, again, go ahead and advance that slide, that there's disproportionate impact for women. That's what the statistics tell us. Women who are funding their family, they're the sole breadwinner. And we know also that women are making a fraction again on the dollar. So the disproportionate impact for young women with families and of color is huge. It's an emergency, really, in our community. Go ahead and advance a slide. This is what our resource center looks like, and it looks like we're chill, right? Except it's a distancing mechanism. We're only allowed to provide said service a little bit at a time. It's very difficult for you to help someone on a computer at 6 foot distance. It's impossible. So we're doing the best that we can, especially when people aren't knowing how to type or work their mouse, etc. So what are we doing? Since it's not back to normal fast, it's not going to come back to normal very well or quickly. We're learning from the people who are coming to us saying, we don't know how to use a computer. We don't have internet at home. We are not sure how to create an email. We aren't sure what the language is. We're assisting people one-on-one, but we're also amplifying the need for helping people learn quick how to make friends with the computer, providing opportunities for virtual job fairs for the people who come through or at other locations in town. Next slide. We're providing packets of information with a zillion jobs that are available right now. You wouldn't even think that, would you? There are companies who have boomed during this period. It's just that it's going to take a shift in our expectation and also a challenge to make sure that we're communicating to people where are the opportunities and to get that opportunity connected with folks. Slide. Helping people through those drive-through career fairs. Slide. Providing virtual career fairs. Slide. And then increasing the skill level. Here, last Friday, we had a forklift training. Distancing was provided. We funded the certification, and then there are companies that are hiring forklift certified people right now. So we had 18 people that are looking to connect with those opportunities. So warehousing, think warehousing, think transportation. These are the things and these industries who are continuing to boom and need people quick right now. Call centers. We just need to get the intel to the people and get them connected. And you know, in a virtual atmosphere, folks aren't used to needing to do job interviews online. And how do you even do that if you can't work a computer? So helping people accommodate and getting that connected quicker is what we're doing. So this is again a natural career change time. Scary as hell though, right? I mean, what if we all had to turn left real quick and start another career? Fact is that that will happen and is happening for folks. And it could end up being something pretty wonderful, an on-ramp to a career that is a ladder rather than stacking lots of part-time jobs. We're going to have to target our efforts though, aren't we? We're going to have to communicate well, and we're going to have to communicate with the people who need us the most in their neighborhoods, through their schools, through their trusted faith communities, to let them know that these options are available and we can ramp them up quick. Here at the American Job Center, we have over 16 partner programs that are ready to go to career coach folks for dollars for training and actually connect them with employers that are ready to hire right now. So things that we need to keep in mind as I'm wrapping up. Not everybody has internet and computers or education to use them. And we have to remember that when we think about the interventions that it's going to take to get people back to work. We've got to fix the infrastructure. Everybody need internet. Our community has found that we are reliant. If we don't have internet, we don't apply for unemployment insurance. We don't do job applications. Things stop if we don't have internet and computer access. That's an emergency for our Douglas County and our particular service area. We had one mom come in with her 10-year-old son, kind of puzzled, but also kind of pleading, saying, my son cannot get his homework done. We have internet through the school at home, but it's so inconsistent that it keeps kicking him off and he can't get it done. I don't want him to get behind. These are not, again, isolated instances, but kind of the status quo for some folks in our community. We've got to keep that in mind. We need targeted opportunities, especially for the people who are hit the hardest, with multiple layers. And that looks like women, young women of color, supporting families. That looks like people who are Spanish speaking and immigrants. That looks like African-American people who have experienced incredible racism, and it's coming to a pinnacle right now. Our targeted interventions are repeating refrain of, this isn't just throwing flyers from a helicopter. It's very direct interventions for people that need us to be there the most. Soon, a paper will come out, say in the end of November, that will help us understand the details, the statistics, the concrete information of who has been hit the hardest and where are they, so that we can rally cry in our community, foundations, businesses, with targeted efforts to meet them exactly where they are. When we do that, when we raise also the brown and the Black opportunities and income, our whole community raises up. So these are things that I'd love for you to keep in mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Erin. I had one more slide, I think, from Erin, and then we will move on. Thank you so much, Erin. That was great information, and your passion really shines through. So thank you for all you do. Next, we have Amy, the Executive Director of, Amy Bennett has a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's of nonprofit organizations. Prior to joining the YWCA, Amy was the Executive Director of Heartland CASA. So I will turn it over to Amy Bennett, Executive Director of YWCA.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and just want to tell you a little bit about YWCA. YWCA of Grand Island serves Hall, Hamilton, Howard, and Merritt counties, and our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and to promote peace, justice, dignity, and freedom for all. And I can't echo enough of what Erin was just saying about the effect of COVID on women. and people of color in our community. And it segues nice into what I'm going to talk about, which is the effect of childcare, the effect COVID has had on childcare, but as well as what it's having on women. And the thing that I want everyone to understand is that prior to COVID, childcare, or as we like to call early education and care in Nebraska, was already struggling. Childcare subsidy eligibility in the state of Nebraska is 130% poverty. It is one of the lowest eligibilities of any state in the country. We already had parents who are struggling to pay their childcare bills. We have one parent at our center who makes $200 a year too much to afford her childcare bill. So we put her on a payment plan, and she owes us money that I know we'll never see, but the choice was either that or she stopped working. And we don't want that to have to be the choice. What we also know is that it's women who tend to care for our children. It is women who then have the negative effects when there is not adequate childcare. We also know that it's so important for children to have early education, that when children aren't at a quality center or being provided with quality care during the day, that there are negative effects in the future. Children who are at high risk that do not have access to early education are more likely to become teen parents, more likely to be incarcerated, and more likely to not graduate from high school. We also know that the majority of a child's brain is developed, 90% of a brain is developed between 0 and 3 years old. So we have to make sure that we're doing the work early. Here in Grand Island, in my experience, we're going to talk about being a child care provider as well as what it means to be a parent in these times, is the experience that we've had in Grand Island, but it's not unique to us. Many child care centers across the state of Nebraska are experiencing what we're experiencing, and many parents are experiencing what we are experiencing. I also just want to point out that prior to COVID-19, we were already struggling to make ends meet when it comes to child care. As the YWCA, we are fortunate to have other programming and fundraising at our fingertips to make ends meet. But on average, we raise $60,000 a year to cover the cost of our child care center outside of our program fees, because our program fees don't meet the bottom line. Now with COVID, we've seen that we lost over $60,000 just from COVID alone in 3 months. So during COVID, when in March and April, Grand Island saw the spike of COVID cases in our community. We went from having 75 children here during day and after school to 20 kids at the beginning of April. At that point, we had a choice. Do we keep serving children, or do we keep our doors open? And how do we keep our doors open and paying our staff? Then our positivity rate went over 50% in the city of Grand Island. And at that point, we had no choice but to close our doors. Our staff were scared. They didn't want to come to work. Parents were scared. They didn't want to send their kids. So we closed for 6 weeks. Again, we lost over $40,000 during that 6-week closure period. When it was time to reopen, we had to figure out how do we do that and how do we do it safely. We also found that parents didn't come right back. We only had 40 kids return when we opened throughout the summer. During the same period of time in the city of Grand Island, we had 2 child care centers which closed permanently because they couldn't afford to stay open. We had other centers who closed for periods of time and had to lay their staff off because they could not afford to pay them. During our closure, we did not charge parents for our fees. We also made sure that we weren't charging parents who weren't coming while we were open because of the pandemic. 35% of the children that we serve are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and we knew that families could not afford for us to be closed and for them to pay us or to not send their kids. So we made those difficult choices for the parents that we serve. We had smaller classrooms during this time, so even though we were only serving 40 kids when we reopened in May, we still had to staff like we were serving 75 kids because we had to make sure that our kids were safe and in small classrooms. We laid off 2 staff members, and we had to cut staff hours during this period of time as well. Then as school reopened, which I'm so proud of Grand Island Public Schools, they've done an amazing job with reopening schools safely, and we started to see our numbers climb back up. And then suddenly those kids who were at centers that closed needed a place for care. And we were getting frantic phone calls that they needed care starting on Monday, and it was a Friday afternoon. So we have now grown, having over 87 kids enrolled in our center during this time period. So what does that mean for us? It means that we've had to find staffing that is hard to find. during this time period to make sure that we're providing our quality of care. It also has meant for us that we are still making pandemic plans to keep kids safe. So we're having smaller classrooms, still eating lunch in the classroom. Our staff are still wearing masks in the hallways, trying to make all of the plans that we need to make to keep everyone safe. The other thing that it means is that we're keeping an eye on the numbers, and in our community, those numbers are going back up. Positivity rate is going back up, and we have a plan for what happens when schools close. So in March, when the schools closed, we turned into a virtual school building as well. We then had to staff our school-age kids so that they were getting their virtual school learning done during the day. It's not something that we're designed to do, but we had to transition very quickly to do that. So we are in a plan that if for some reason, because of our numbers, our schools close again, we'll be running a full-time school-age program that will focus on virtual school and making sure that kids get the school that they need. What we've seen and what we saw in March was that parents were making choices because their kids needed to learn, that they were not able to go to work, or they were transitioning to working from home and keeping their kids at home with them. In addition to all of that, what we have found is that fighting quality care in our community is hard. We don't have enough centers open. Our center here, we already have a waiting list for 2 of our classrooms because we don't have enough space. And we also don't have enough staff at this point to add more space in. And so there's a crisis with childcare. And if we want to help women go back to work, we have to provide quality, accessible childcare that is affordable for everyone. And I just want to say to everyone that while caring for children has fallen to women, we also have to make sure that in our community that it's a society issue, it's a business issue. Childcare is important because people can't work if they can't take care of their kids. And I think that is something that we need to recognize. It was an issue before COVID, and we are seeing even more dire effects on childcare due to COVID. So, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. It was, again, a great presentation. And thank you again to all of our panelists, or all of our presenters. That wraps up that section of it. So we really appreciate your efforts and everything you've had to go through COVID-19 to help our communities make them the best they can be. Thank you again. Okay, I will turn it back over to Lori. Lori, you're on mute.
I'll start over, sorry. We're going to give our candidates an opportunity to introduce themselves and to make a comment or ask a question, just a minute or so that we can get to know you. And again, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to all of our members. So I'll call on you, and if you can go ahead and introduce yourself and whatever you want to say, that would be great. Mark Snow. Is Mark with us still? Okay. We will go on to John Kavanaugh.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Kavanaugh. I'm running for legislature in District 9 in Midtown Omaha. So currently I'm a Douglas County public defender and have been for the last 7 years. So pretty much every topic you talked about tonight kind of hit on the people that I've served for the last 7 years, and ultimately why I decided to run for legislature was that I don't think we are, as a state, doing enough for those folks. We have a lot of housing instability issues. We have food instability issues. We have people who have trouble finding jobs, which is tied to both of those other 2 things, as well as transportation issues. And so I'm running to address those things when I get in the legislature. Healthcare, of course, is another aspect of that disproportionately affects the folks that I serve. And so I would like to see our state do a better job of serving those folks. If I'm able to comment on one thing, it would probably be about what Jeff was talking about from legal aid. I've certainly sent a number of my clients to the services of legal aid. We as public defenders represent people, indigent folks in criminal cases, but they always a lot of folks have a connected civil issue in some way. And so I've definitely sent a lot of people to the Omaha Office of Legal Aid. I appreciate their services. And I know that I saw that Ms. Rakes asked a question about evictions. I've sent a lot of folks to get the help of the eviction lawyers at Legal Aid here in Omaha. And that's kind of through my interaction with those folks and some other folks here in town, and the COVID crisis has kind of really pushed me to look into more related to what we should be doing about evictions. And one of the things I've been talking about a lot is increasing legal representation for folks in those tenant issues. So we don't need to talk about it now, Jeff, but at some point I'd love to pick your brain about how we can change the landlord-tenant laws here in Nebraska and what else we can do to expand that equity in the housing situation. So thanks everybody for everything. It's really informative and fun, and I'll stop talking now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John Kavanaugh. Cheryl Lindau.
Hi, I'm running for the legislature in District 17. District 17 is in Northeast Nebraska, comprised of Wayne County, Dakota County, and Thurston County. I'm in a fairly unique district, mostly because my district is 42% minority, which is probably unusual for this part of rural Nebraska. We do have a significant level of poverty up here, and several of the areas that you touched on this evening, I think are very relevant to the situation of people living in this part of Nebraska. And my background, I am currently retired, but my history is I'm a former mayor of Wayne. I'm a former small business owner. I'm just starting my 27th year of living in Northeast Nebraska, but I did have a break in between. And during that break, I lived in Omaha for 14 years, and I'm really familiar with NAM and the nonprofit sector in that area. I worked for a nonprofit while I was there. So, I worked for Big Brothers Big Sisters. We served a lot of minority kids in poverty, single parent homes, a lot of the families that you have talked about this evening. So I am very concerned about working families, children living in poverty, and the issues surrounding that. So I congratulate you on the work that all the nonprofits do to support our state. It's really important, and I'm glad to learn more about what you're working on and the challenges that you're facing with COVID-19. It's definitely a challenge that we're all going to face across the state. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you very much, Cheryl Lindau. Stephanie Pleasant.
Hi. First, I would like to thank you guys for inviting me to this, as well as hosting this. I have a lot of experience in the nonprofit world. I started my public service career working for College Possible, I believe is in both of your organizations. And then I've also worked for Disability Rights of Nebraska, which I believe is in NOM, and worked with the ACLU and Legal Aid and multiple nonprofit organizations. And I continue to work for them. I continue to help with eviction processes and things like that. And so your work is really building our community and making Nebraska really a better place to live and a place for everyone to live in and everyone to live in comfortably. So I just want to thank you all for the people that are watching and the people that have presented for your work and the people who invited me here today. It's very critical work, and it's going to become more critical as we can see through many of the presentations in the next coming 10 years. So my name is Stephanie Pleasant. I'm running in District 25. That's Northeast Lincoln, Waverly, and the surrounding villages like Walton. And I ran because I wanted to remove barriers from working families. And I think that this panel and this information seminar is exactly who would understand what I'm talking about, right? So I'll bounce a little bit off of what Mr. Bart said. 1 year of food insecurity can result in 10 years of catching back up. And we know that that's the same with house loss and job loss as well. And that I learned from my personal experience, which is what drove me to serve as a public servant to begin with. I watched as my mom, who was a full-time working nurse and a single mother, attempt to balance having a 60-hour-a-week job, because she worked both a full-time nursing job and a part-time nursing job, and still trying to balance raising 3 kids and struggling with daycare, struggling with food. We were still going to food banks, and we were still struggling with paying rent. And when she lost her job after my brother got ill, I mean, both my older brother and I got jobs in order to help with the family, and it took us decades to get ourselves back to square one. And so I completely understand where some of these issues are coming from, and I've dedicated my career to working with them. And what pushed me to run really was that I understand how critical this joint representation is going to be in the next couple of years, right? So I actually announced my candidacy right before everything closed for COVID. And it was immediately an understanding that if we don't do something right now, we're going to be dealing with this and dealing with struggling working families for more than 10 years. I mean, I love that 10 years is the assessment, but the fact that nothing got done in the legislation over the summer, or at least not in a way that could have really benefited these families, is going to show that we're going to be struggling for a while. And so that's really what pushed me to run. It pushes me to continue my public service career. I work as an attorney for the University of Nebraska Lincoln, where I provide free legal services. Prior to that, I provided them for Disability Rights of Nebraska as a staff attorney there. And on the side, I represent people for the ACLU for free, as well as I do the eviction cases in Lincoln. And I do all of this because I know I've been in that situation, and my real life experience makes me understand where some of these things that have come up, like for example, Miss Erin was speaking about, some of the shame and some of the hardships that come from losing a job that you've had for 20 years and then having to file for unemployment. I understand that. It's the same shame that I see, my clients struggling with when they've lived somewhere for 3 years comfortably, but now they can't afford to pay their rent because of COVID, because they lost their job and they don't know where to go after that. It's the same kind of shame.
I'm gonna have to cut you off. Sorry,
my apologies.
No, you're fine.
I just wanted to thank you guys for your work, and I just wanted to say I'm very honored to be invited here and to speak with you, and thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Laura, you're on mute.
Gonna mix it up a little bit. Sorry, Senator Quick.
Hi, and thank you for having me on, or having me here. I enjoyed the presentations, and we've been really fortunate in Grand Island to have the nonprofits that we have that can serve our community. I know I've been able to visit a few of them, along with getting to visit with Amy Bennett at the YWCA. And one of the things for us, Grand Island spiked early with COVID, so I watched our community pull together. I'm really proud of how our community pulled together, and we had not only the nonprofits represented on our COVID community meetings, but we also had the Grand Island Chamber. We also had our public health director, Teresa Anderson, and then also the hospital had someone on there to give a report, along with some of the physicians. And the nonprofits have just done an outstanding job of helping us get through that, and also working on other, we had breakouts from there, other meetings, which included behavioral health, housing, and then also communications. And I guess I forgot to introduce where I'm from. I'm actually from District 35, which is Grand Island. And I represent just a portion of Grand Island. I have I have about 39,000 of the population. Senator Friesen has the rest of that. So, but I'm really fortunate to have that we have a lot of the nonprofits that we have. I've had the opportunity to work with them and meet them over the last 4 years. visit with them and go to their locations and take tours and see what they do to help people. So I'll leave it at that, and look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Senator Click. Let's go ahead and do Senator Linehan. Senator, I think you're on mute. Hannah, do we know what's going on?
Yeah, she's the only one we haven't been able to hear so far. Maybe try to turn up your volume on the computer itself if you can hear me. Okay, we'll come back to you. I'll see if there's anything I can do on my end. I'm not sure.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, Senator. We'll come back to you. How about Fred Conley?
Fred Conley, I'd like to thank all of the panelists that provided very good information. Healthcare is an issue in the area I seek to represent, the LD 11 here in Omaha. Payday lending is another issue that I think has a greater impact on poor people. And I'm very interested in pushing the idea that that passes here in Nebraska. I serve on the Charles Group Board, since I know the impact of healthcare on low and middle income people. Also, education is awfully important to me. We want to see that we properly fund education for the large metropolitan school districts, both in Lincoln and Omaha. Affordable housing, I'm very interested in what we can do as a state to provide affordable housing. And also I was interested in the comments made about housing in North Platte. I mean, what can we do as a state to provide resources that the houses that need repairing have access to? So there are a lot of issues that they presented. I was very glad I was invited in terms of what nonprofits throughout the state are doing. And so I look forward to working with many of them with regards to what are the possible solutions to some of those problems. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Fred Conley, for being with us. Susan Hester.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm Susan Hester, and I'm running for legislature in District 45, which is Greater Bellevue, which was previously served by Sue Crawford, and she's been term limited out. I'm a retired Bellevue school teacher, and actually have spent my time since retirement involved in nonprofits. I'm on the board of NCAP, which operates all through Douglas and Sarpy County and out into Dodge County, I think. And primarily my experience with them has been with the food pantry and the food insecurity here in Bellevue. And we had a huge spike in food insecurity last year with the floods, and now of course this year with COVID. And so I'm pretty familiar with that. Luckily Bellevue has, besides NCAP, Kiwanis helps with that, Bellevue Together helps with that, and I work with all those groups. And also I'm on the Bellevue Public Schools Foundation Board, and we run the after school child program. And so I know exactly what you're talking about there with the child care, and we had to shut down and figure out how to open and how to keep them safe and how to make enough money to keep it open. And so I'm pretty familiar with that. We just have to keep with it, I guess. But thank you for sharing all your challenges with us. I do agree that the legislature needs to do a better job serving these people who are struggling and these families and who need more help. I think that there are things that could be done. A lot of them have been brought up here, and I am looking forward to working on those. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan Hester. Do we know if we have Senator Linehan ready yet? No?
Nope. I will. She's gonna send me her statement, and I will share it because this one isn't working either. I'm so sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, Senator Linehan. Let's go to Helen Rakes.
Unmute. Hi, I am Helen Rakes, and my district is District 23. I'm running as a challenger to an incumbent. We are 3 counties, Saunders County, Butler County, and most of Colfax County, and they're all quite different from one another, but with some similarities. I would say the main similarity is that we're all still basically rural here. And so many of the things that you talked about today are, I have a boatload of questions. And so I hope we can come back to the questions because each of your presentations was so compelling and stirred a number of important questions to me. And so I appreciate that. I also am really loving meeting the other candidates. You know, I think we've mutually attended many sessions, but we haven't had a chance to talk to each other too. So that's a great thing. I live in rural Ashland. My husband's family, the Rakes family, have been farming here for 100 years or more. I'm a Willa Cather Professor Emeritus from the University of Nebraska. My area is early childhood development, and so I'm really eager to talk to Amy more, but I have concerns in all the areas like Susan. My late husband was a state senator from 2000 to 2008. He was killed in a farming accident in 2009. And so at that time, I said to him, I'll finish the service work. And that's where this began for me. But now I have a whole number of reasons why I'm running. I really care passionately about the future of Nebraska. I have 4 grandchildren who live in the state. And I'm particularly keyed into the bipartisan roots of the unicameral. I'm running as an independent, and you know, I'm stepping up for the service. So it's been a challenging campaign, but you know, here we are, and it's going great. One of the things I wanted to maybe highlight here was that I did have the honor of being the keynote speaker for the Nebraska Thriving Communities Conference in Kearney in 2019. And so I've always thought about thriving children and thriving parents, but that began my thinking about what does it take for a community, especially a rural community, but all of our communities to thrive. And so many of the things that you've talked about today are really resonate with me. It's like, whoa, you know, we have a long ways to go to get to thriving in many cases, but the things that you brought up, affordable housing and broadband and childcare, are issues in so many of our rural communities. And so I would really, really love to be able to think about how we leverage for thriving. You know, we have a lot of needs, and so what are the leverage points here? And where I particularly want to land is because I had the opportunity to work both with my husband and then later on the board of directors on the Sixpence Early Childhood Program, which is a 0 to 3 program in our state. And that is a public-private partnership. And so I want Brian to talk more about what that public-private partnership for food insecurity looks like, you know, and what can we do to leverage our private sector while we're trying to be responsive in the public sector. Thank you.
Thank
I have
you.
your question written down, and we will go through all the questions after.
Okay, okay, I got some more too.
Written down. Yep.
Thank you very much, Helen Rakes. Allison Hymas.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm Allison Hymas, running for state legislator out of District 39, which is Elkhorn Valley, Waterloo, Millard, Omaha, pretty much all of Western Douglas County. And I'm very passionate about volunteering. I am a board member on the Kim Foundation's LOSS team, which focuses on mental health and suicide prevention, obviously as a result of my brother passing away 3 years ago from suicide. And I'm also a member of the Honor and Remember Nebraska chapter, which focuses on Gold Star families because my brother was in the military. So I also love working at the food bank, and my day job is as an immigration and criminal law attorney, so I help a lot of minority communities as well. I want all of you to know how committed I am to making sure that we help people through COVID and that we create bills that will help people in the long run as well get through some of the long-term effects that COVID are going to have on our constituents and on Nebraskans in general. And I do have a question for all of you. My question is, going forward, how can the legislature help get nonprofits back on track with pre-COVID numbers? So if you want to write that question down, I'm going to keep my time limited to the 1 to 2 minute mark. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Allison. Janet Palmtag.
Hi, thank you everybody for the presentation. I'm Janet Palmtag, running for legislature in District 1, Southeast Nebraska. I'm a small business owner, born and raised here, have 3 grown children and 2 grandchildren now. I will tell you that I help with the food bank in Nebraska City, and we are very surprised at the increasing number of people. It's startling that show up for the food truck. So I'm very happy to help with that, but definitely recognize a shocking increase in those numbers. I also helped with the backpack program, or still do, for our schools, and pre-COVID, that was starting to increase drastically as well. So we were concerned about increasing poverty pre-COVID. And so now, you know, we wonder what direction that's going to go. So it's a concern. As far as legal aid Nebraska goes, I was not informed on everything they do, but through my local Rotary program, we are actually contracting or trying to contract with legal aid right now to come to Nebraska City to help our people with all of the issues that we talked about that you cover. So I'm excited about that. I have studied poverty a little bit. About 8 years ago, I spent some time in India studying poverty, you know, why it exists and how we can fix it. But coming back the past few years, I have decided we've got to deal with our problems, I think, here with our growing poverty. So I'm excited about potentially being a part of helping our state with that. As far as nonprofits go, again, I'm an entrepreneur. I have run several companies. I have a startup right now, obtained a patent last year for a product that we're working on. So that's kind of exciting to help rural Nebraska. Hopefully it will turn into something great. But as far as nonprofit goes, I've been involved with renovating a veterans memorial building, and learned all about grant writing and raising money for that. And I'm also helping our local nuns, our Catholic nuns, build a convent. And so that's been kind of a fun project for me as well. So anyway, enough about that. I'm excited about what you all do and excited to learn more. So thank you for including me this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for joining us, Janet Palmtag. Terrell McKinney.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you all for having me. I appreciated the presentation as well. I'm running for state legislature in District 11, which is primarily North Omaha, which currently has the highest poverty in the state and one of the probably the highest, also the highest unemployment rate. Before I decided to run, I worked as a hunger action advocate with Nebraska Appleseed, focused on food insecurity. Also as a community organizer, organizing around Medicaid expansion. I've also done other work in the North Omaha community with organizations like Black Men United and Policy Research and Innovation. My focus for my campaign and going into the legislature is economic equity and opportunity, finding ways to empower small business and entrepreneurs in the district, criminal justice reform, education, and healthcare access. All four are big for me and big for my community. And I honestly just appreciate the time and look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Terrell McKinney. Tim Royers.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. My normal mic is goofy, so I'm gonna look like a radio DJ for a second while I'm talking, but it's okay. Hey, my name's Tim Royers. I'm running for the legislature in District 31. I'm a teacher in Millard. I spent 13 years teaching at Millard West. I was the 2016 Nebraska Teacher of the Year. And then this past spring, I was elected to serve as the president of the Millard Education Association. So I am on leave of my classroom duties to serve in that capacity and represent the teachers. And I also sit on the board for the Millard Public Schools Foundation. All the issues that were discussed tonight are, I've talked to residents in my community out in District 31 is out in Millard and Elkhorn. It's down in kind of the southwest corner of Omaha. But it's impacted, all those issues are impacting members of my community. I guess for my specific question is to Amy about the issue of childcare and what the state can do to help with the issue of affordable childcare, because, I've heard about that as an issue from folks. When both of our girls were in childcare, we were paying more for childcare than we were for our mortgage. So I know that it's an expense for families, but at the same time, when you look at what people are being paid that work in the childcare industry, it's not enough. And so it's a catch-22 for a lot of families that it's a high expense. But for people working in the industry, they need more support too. And so I want to know what your thoughts are on how we can help make childcare affordable, but also make sure that it's an option for folks to get into that pays well. So that's my question for later.
Great. Thank you very much, Tim Royers, for joining us. Do we have something from Senator Linehan, Hannah?
Yes. I am just going to read verbatim what her statement was. Thank you for including me this evening. I appreciate all that your organizations do, especially in these difficult times. You represent what is the best thing about Nebraska. I am chair of the Revenue Committee and also serve on the Education Committee. I represent District 39, which includes Elkhorn, Valley, Waterloo, and parts of West Omaha. I am hopeful that the micro TIF program passed this summer will help with the housing shortages across our state. I was proud to support it. I also believe we need to figure out how to help children enrolled in CHIP, which is the Children's Health Insurance Program. Again, thank you for all you do.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Senator Linehan. Hannah, why don't we get right into the question so we have time to hear some answers?
Yep. I'm going to start with Jeff, if he will answer a couple questions. First, Jeff, how many housing evictions have been reduced during COVID, or have they?
There's been so much money coming in. Hope you can all hear me. There's been so much money, federal money coming in from the Congress, and then also there's been Governor Ricketts had the moratorium on evictions, which has expired back in August or something like that, or I don't recall exactly when it expired. But then more recently, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, issued it's a stop order, told everybody to stop evictions. But so evictions haven't started yet, but they're going to start, and it's going to be a lot because I'm in my office. I'm looking at 5 files right now on my desk that my clients are waiting to be evicted, but the fact is the government said they can't be evicted, but they're so far behind on rent, they're not going to catch up. And one thing to understand about the low-income community is nothing's done until it's beyond urgent. And that's why they don't open their mail, because it's always bad news. And I'm straying off the topic here, but the evictions haven't exploded yet, but they're going to. And the money just isn't enough to allow the low income community to keep paying their rent. And the kid gets sick and they took the rent money and paid the doctor. It's always all that kind of stuff. So to answer the question, the evictions haven't gone up. They've just, in fact, they've almost disappeared. But it's just going to be, it's delaying the pain. It's going to be a lot worse when it finally starts.
Okay, Jeff, we have the next ones also for you, just so we can get them all to you. What does the public-private partnership for food insecurity refer to look like? Are there best practice models in other states?
are you talking to me for food security?
I think that one was for Brian.
That's for Brian. I'm so sorry. Yep.
I was gonna say, I think I might be able to take that one.
Sorry, Brian.
That's
Yep.
okay. That's okay. You know what? Great question. And we did get a little flavor of that during COVID. You know, we received some assistance when the governor deployed the National Guard, when we needed volunteer help. And for months of April, May, and part of June, we had the National Guard at our facility helping us package food. And let me also state that our food bank and Food Bank of Lincoln have a tremendous working relationship with the Department of Health and Human Services when it comes to our work related to SNAP assistance. But the one thing that I think when I point to a public-private partnership, we're talking about on the federal and state level as well. On the state level, I know Senator Kavanaugh has introduced legislation, I believe in 2018 and 2019, that would increase gross eligibility limits for folks to receive SNAP benefits, and those two pieces of legislation both failed. And if we look over on the east side of the Missouri River, since we serve Iowa, we are part of a group called the Iowa Food Bank Association. Don't tell me why, but Nebraska has 2 food banks and the state of Iowa has 6. And over in Iowa, there is great momentum, and it looks like in their upcoming legislative session, there's going to be approval to give sales tax relief to food banks in the state of Iowa. I know that would be a tremendous benefit to us and the Food Bank of Lincoln. So those are just some of the things that I could mention off the top of my head. You know, when it comes to what the state can do, you know, the SNAP area is huge. You know, one thing that, look, we've heard the news in regards to max allotment that the governor has been pressed on, that we are the only state in the nation that has not taken advantage of max allotments for food stamp benefits. We are trying to make the case and hope that the governor will change his mind. That is something that is huge, that will help us tremendously. Let's put it this way. You know, we distribute food all the way across to Scotts Bluff. It would certainly be a lot more efficient for us to be able to put dollars on an EBT card of somebody in Scotts Bluff, as opposed to us putting food on a truck and driving it clear across the state to distribute it that way. When it comes to SNAP, for every meal distributed by a food bank, SNAP can do 9. So it's just a much more efficient way for food to be distributed. And also for every dollar, it creates $1.70 in economic impact in the local community. We have grocery stores that would certainly benefit by increasing the amount of benefits allowed for SNAP recipients. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Brian. Erin, we had a question for you. Is transportation to jobs an issue that you're seeing?
Yes, most definitely. Fully. The challenges there are, you know, if you say, well, how about bus tickets? It doesn't go to the place, it doesn't run at the times, and it's hard to haul kids and drop off at daycare and then pick up and so on. So we haven't struck a gold mine of solution there. I think that the rapid transit is a step in the right direction, but it just goes up and back off of Dodge. We've had a couple of curious pilots where we actually contracted with NCAP to serve youth who were not in school or working, and they had kids as a vehicle to get them there, say for their first month, and hopefully once that income was solid, they could figure out how to get there after that. It was a vital pilot. We don't have that going now. You know, Uber and all of that kind of stuff, super expensive, but can get you there more directly and back. So we have done a little bit of that. Haven't struck the gold mine yet in the solution.
Thank you, Erin. We did have one more question from Facebook, but I think that will be better suited for the follow-up questionnaire. So I believe that is all the questions, Lori.
Okay, great, thank you. I want to thank again our presenters, Ryan Barks with the Food Bank for the Heartland, Jeff Eastman with Legal Aid of Nebraska, Aaron Porterfield with Heartland Workforce Solutions, and Amy Bennett with the YWCA of Grand Island. Thanks for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedules to chat with us and tell us more about what you do. We're very thankful for what you do and appreciate the information. Again, thank you to our candidates for attending tonight. It means a great deal to have this conversation now rather than when session begins. And we appreciate you showing the interest in our nonprofits and what we do statewide. And I think Joe had a statement to wrap us up tonight. Nothing wrong with getting done a little early. So
yes,
Joe?
Thank you, Lori, and thank you all for joining us. Particularly to our candidates, we just want to remind you, as well as our panelists, that this recording will be available tomorrow. We will be posting it on our Facebook and in our social media outlets, so stay tuned for that. More importantly, we also will give you 2 critical pieces of information. So you will be receiving a list of all of the nonprofits that are represented in your district. NAM has a wonderful resource called a Community Compass where it can pull lists of nonprofits. So it'll be really important for you as you continue on with your campaign, and if you're elected, to be able to have the resource of the list of nonprofits doing this work in your community. And the other thing we will send you is a questionnaire. So it's just 10 questions. We want to get your thoughts on the intersection between poverty and the work that you may do as a legislator. So we're thinking about a couple of issues that you've heard tonight, as well as a few others. We just want to get your thoughts on that. I know it's a busy time with just a couple of weeks left before the election, but if you could spend a few moments to fill out that questionnaire, we will provide your information to our members, both NAM and CSN. So look for the questionnaire, look for the resources of nonprofits in your district. Again, we are so grateful for your service to our state and for wanting to serve our state. And we thank you for spending some time with us this evening. And with that, we will wrap up early. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.